I'm Jasmine. I'm the CEO of Serenity Nail Polish, which is a vegan nail polish company that I started with myself and my daughter Serenity. At the time, she was 4, and now she's 8 years old. So we've been in business for a few years now. I'm also a social justice educator. So I do teach fifth grade during the day. I'm a teacher. And I also am a philanthropist. I love to do community work. I love to give back to the community. Um, and I'm just all things people, all things on very big on how can we help others and how we can be in service to others. That's what I do for a living. It's the nature of the work. It's the nature behind my why. And so that's a little bit about me.
That's the biggest key, man. That's the biggest key. That's the biggest gem. At the end of the day, we move as a unit, we move as a community,
Hmm.
and it's not just about us. At the end of the day, so it's super important to have people like yourself, that's into bringing people together. For the most part. So I know you've been doing this for a minute. Shout out to Serenity. Where my little homie at? Matter of fact, where the star at? Where the
Playing
superstar?
around, running around.
All right, you get a pass for the day. So yeah, man, real quick, yeah, real quick. Tell them a little bit about your journey and really how how you got into this industry and how did you kind of go about getting into the world of entrepreneurship.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, um, I'll tell you guys the story that the world knows, and some of you may not know, and then I'll tell you the backstory so you guys could understand full picture of the why. So Serenity Nail Polish was born or birthed in the pandemic of 2020. That's when we were all home. We were trying to figure out what was going on. And we were in the middle of a pandemic, a very scary time where a lot of us experienced loss of our loved ones, uncertainty with our jobs, a lot of fear, and we just didn't know what was coming next, right? But during that experience, during that process, and the time that we were able to spend together, Serenity and I, we always used to polish our nails together. That was like our thing. Some people, you know, arts and craft activities are their thing. Movie night is their thing, but she really loved to do her nails. And she is also into art, so she would just paint things with nail polish. She would take her toys, she would repaint it with nail polish. She would paint my nails. She would paint her dad's nails. So that was like her thing. And so we said, as she gets older, let's continue to pay attention to her thing, right? Um, because oftentimes we have these dreams and visions for our children, which is great to set expectations for them and to hold them to great standard, of course. But ultimately, how can we push you in a way that you are going to pursue something that you want to ultimately do for your life? Um, and so one day we ran out of nail polish, and I remember she asked me, "Mommy, there's no more nail polish?" And I said, "There's no more nail polish." And she said she wanted to go to the Serenity nail polish store. So we joked about it that night, and we thought about it some more. And I said to her grandparents the next day, and I was like, I think she might be onto something. It's from the mouth of a baby. And so from there, that's when I started doing a lot of research on different products, something that would be safe and healthy, not just for Serenity to use, right? Because she is of a young age, but for other people to use as well. My entrepreneurship journey, I always knew that I was going to do, I always had that entrepreneur spirit in me from the time that I was younger. Um, I was never settled where I was. So I always want to do more. It was always that question of how can I do more? How can I give more? Right? It was always in my nature. So I grew up in Far Rockaway, Queens, in New York City. My parents are immigrants. They're not from here. I did watch how hard my mom worked. I watched the sacrifices she had to make. So I knew that each generation has got to do better. Each generation has to do better so that we can keep putting other generations behind us, right, in position where they can, again, I always say that, create their own table, where they can create their own lanes, right, and have different avenues. Because even growing up, oftentimes you're told to go the typical route to be a teacher. I mean, I wasn't told to be a teacher. I just was like, that's a whole nother story. But that is the typical route. Be a teacher, be a doctor, be a lawyer, right? But there's not much talk about. Now there is, but when, our times growing up, now it was just like, these are the lanes and routes in which you have to take. But like I said, I watched how hard my mother worked. I watched the sacrifices she made, right? And I said, how can I then give that to my child and do it differently, right? And so now what I'm doing is I'm putting her in position so that when my grandchildren get here, they're going to be in a different position than even 3 generations ago, when my mother brought us on board. So it was Serenity nail polish, in long story short, came from, yes, the mouth of a baby, to a mother trusting her child's vision, to my upbringing and background, to me understanding sacrifice, to me wanting to create another pathway, and understanding, like, yes, this is just one avenue of what generational wealth looks like, but we have to take the step in order to make that happen.
Definitely, definitely. It's super important. You hit a few on a few key topics, but first I want to commend you for stepping out on faith and actually listening to your kid, because I think a lot of people they see
Hmm.
their kids, man, and I always tell people, and I've been saying this for years: if you got kids, you got a cheat code, literally.
Right.
Because they are the future, and they literally looking into the future. And we sometimes we stuck in how we came up, especially
Hmm.
our parents. Because I grew up in that generation where entrepreneurship was looked down upon. It was shunned. I know I grew up with a lot of first generation um,
Right.
folk as well. So I know that's how they was, their parents and really wasn't having it, because they just looking at it like, look, I didn't spent my savings to get over here. You definitely
Yep.
gonna be a doctor or a lawyer. Because that's all they see. They don't really, like I said before, we don't grow up thinking about financial literacy or running a business. Most of us, I was blessed, for me to grow up seeing my mother, be an entrepreneur, and my grandmother, she opened her own beauty salon, different things like that. But
Right.
for the most part, I was lucky to be able to see that, because a lot of my people that I grew up with, in the
Hmm.
city of Detroit, they wasn't growing up like that. Their parents on Section 8, food stamps, or selling
Hmm.
milk. You know what I mean? So
Right. Right.
and we sponges. We only know what we
Hmm.
what we see, what we experience, and so and
Absolutely.
that's something I always try to tell people. And you can beat the odds sometimes. It's not that way every single time, but most of the
Hmm.
time you grew up around, you're gonna be what you grew up around at the end of the day. So that's why it's super
Absolutely.
important for people like you. That's why I commend you for being that example for your daughter. So by the time she get our age, it's second nature. She don't have to have this conversation like, oh, I didn't know, or our parents didn't support my entrepreneurial journey, because I know at first mine didn't. It was
Right.
I was an entrepreneur way back before it was cool. And once you get out of that kid stage and become an adult, and you still thinking entrepreneur, they looking at it like, yo, you need to get a job. Like, what's going? This ain't you gambling,
So true.
and this ain't gonna happen.
Yep.
Now I'm grateful that my mother we can kind of have a different conversation now, because she's taking her journey as an entrepreneur, which I'm proud of.
I
For
know
me,
that's right.
we can have these conversations now, but before she didn't
Hmm.
understand it, and now it's like now it's funny, because fast forward now I'm giving her advice, and I'm consulting her
Hmm.
businesses and managing her, and helping her go through, and I'm listening to her tell these stories, and I'm like, welcome to my life. Welcome to the world of entrepreneurs. You thought I was just trying to go the easy route, and a lot of people don't know being an entrepreneur is not the easy route. It's super hard.
No, not
So
not at
um,
all.
fast forward, thank God, we was able to show and prove, and I was able to show her that, this wasn't just a phase in my life. And I think that's what we was at. She just felt like I was just going through this entrepreneur phase. And it was like,
Right.
no, this is what it is. This is what it is. It's going,
Hmm.
you know, you got to show and prove. And I think that's what everybody. I tell people that coming in, especially people that's coming into, being a business owner. Don't expect your family and friends
Yes.
to support you off the bat. You might
Yep.
get, especially if you're lucky, you might get your friends and family to support what you got going on. But
Hmm.
especially the older generation, they just don't understand. Parents just don't understand
Right.
sometimes. So
Hmm.
You gotta, you can't listen
Absolutely.
to people. You gotta really listen to yourself, follow your heart, and go for what go for what you know, and take that gamble, take that leap of faith. For the most part.
Most definitely.
And you talked about research. This is super. This is something I talk about a lot. This is actually module two, where we speak on market research and idea validation. And I know you
Right.
spoke on that was one of the first things that you did was do your research, and that's super important. A lot of people don't do that; they just go off of passion. What's some of the key factors? Um, and really, can you share like some insights that you discovered doing your research that really shaped your business idea, and how did you go about researching?
Right, exactly. So, like you mentioned, we had to do research, right? One for there's several reasons why we had to do research. The first reason, like I said, we wanted to put out something on the market that was safe, something that was healthy for little kids to use. Because when we first started, Serenity nail polish was strictly for children, right? I was like, what's something safe that the kids can use that if they put it in their mouth and they, they bite it off, they gonna be all right. Like we ain't gonna have nothing
Mm,
happen to them.
mm,
And so what happened was we were getting so many like orders and people reaching out to us about the kid products, but people would say like, do you make this for women too? I've been looking for a vegan nail product to use, and I've been looking for like the other nail polish, the regular nail polish, it doesn't agree with my skin. I feel a burning sensation. So we were shocked to see how many people actually were into purchasing vegan nail polish and looking for them on the market, but they just weren't like running into the right product. And so we wanted to basically take that and expand it. And not only that, we were like, okay, so now it's vegan, and now we're doing research. What we found in the research is a lot of times the reason why the lady was saying that her nails was hurting the bed and stuff like that is because the products that we use, the products that we put in our skin, people always talk about vegan and they think about just like the internal, like, oh, I'm vegan, I eat clean, right? But there's so many different products out there that are healthy and they have like less chemicals in them, like detergent, soaps, all of those things. But for us, we found that those things, they're actually linked to cancer. They're linked to fertility issues for women, and it's just not healthy, right? Because the nail, if you look at the skin on your nails right now, I see you trying not to look down. you the skin that's around it, that's where the products seep in, and so
mm.
when it was time to look at ingredients, we had to say like, what does this ingredient do? What does this word mean? Like same thing when you go to the beauty supply store and you pick up a hair product, 9 times out of 10 they say like, if you cannot pronounce that word, you probably shouldn't be using it, right? And so making sure that making sure that when we look through the ingredients of our products, it didn't contain certain harmful chemicals that would be linked to the things, health conditions and concerns, like I mentioned earlier. So that was something that was super important for us. And then we also tie our polishes to affirmations. So when it was time to name the colors of the polish, I was like, I don't want this to just be called purple. So, come up with affirmations with Serenity, like, and so we came up with like passionate purple, purposeful pink. Um, Now it's like generous green, right? So just behind words of affirmation, like when I'm putting on my polish, I'm not just putting on any polish. I'm putting on a polish that's not only cruelty free, not only healthy, but it's also, and not only making me feel good and boosting my confidence, right? But it's also after affirmations, and it's just reminding you to be, confident in who you are and affirming who you are as well.
Gotta affirm it for sure. So, like, did you was that something that you seen on the news that was happening? Like, people, like the kids was getting sick, or was that something that you read up on? Like, how did you go about?
No, it's something that we actually read up on. It's something that we read up on because what I started to do was I typed in vegan nail polish versus regular nail polish. And when I did that, I started to see all of the differences, right? And then of course you get like main, like basic differences that'll pop up. Like, okay, one is has harmful smells. Like when you go into the nail salon, that harsh smell, that's because the products are not vegan based. And then there's even like different things that exist in the vegan world, like oil based versus water based. which polishes last longer versus last less. But when I started to look at the ingredients, I literally typed in every ingredient. I said, I want to know what this does. Does this nourish the nail? What does this do? And so we were able to discover the link between the ingredients that were not good to be put in products versus the ones that were beneficial for our customers.
I love that, and that's where that passion comes. I think it got to be, we all want to make money, of course. Like, we all want to
Hmm.
be well off. We all want to pay our bills and, be financially free. But at the end of the day, man, it has to have some type of passion, behind it as well.
Right.
Passionate enough to take that extra step and, make sure that you separate yourself from these other competitors in whatever way and put your own twist on it. I think that's super big. And I think that's what's going to really get y'all over that hump, or what put y'all over that hump. Because I've been doing some amazing things, and
Thank
my
you.
years, all of my years, I really haven't came across, and I've came across so many different ideas and companies and brands, but I really haven't came across a brand like y'all. So that's super dope. And it's always good to really stick out. Um, so real quick, I want to touch on this month's module because I know it's the last week of Module 4. It's
Yes.
and financial literacy and budgeting is super important, especially when
Hmm.
it comes to, you know, uh, building and maintaining a business and also just maintaining your lifestyle. So, how do you approach budgeting for your business and what strategies do you use to ensure your financial stability?
Right. Thank you for asking. That's, such a great question, and it's a very important question to ask. When people see numbers, not everybody, but numbers can be scary, right? But everything has to be attached to a number. Like you have to know where every dollar is going. Um, and in the beginning, you make pitfalls as you go. And so one thing that I did to make sure that I know my numbers and stuff like that is I have a spreadsheet. You have a profit, you have a loss spreadsheet. You know what the product you're paying for, how much is it costing me? How much am I selling it for? Is it a profit at the end of it? Is it a loss? How many times a month are customers purchasing this particular product that we have selling, and is that bringing in the revenue that our business needs to be sustainable, right? Are we spending too much of our budget in one area versus another, meaning like are we dishing out money when it comes to partnerships that we know won't necessarily take us the route that we need to go, or they're not like aligned to our mission and our values for the sake of saying that we did a partnership? Or are we paying for like partnerships or sponsorship that we know can help drive our business forward, whether that's marketing, branding. Um, so it's super important to have a financial goal, a financial plan. I used to have a bookkeeper as well. I know a lot of people use QuickBooks. That's like a simpler way to keep track of your budget. Also, like each month I go in personally now and I just do it myself. I go it through like my receipts, my emails. I have a receipt book with all the receipts with things that I spent for our business, and I plug in the numbers, and I just take a day and I'm like, this is a business day, but this is my budgeting day. This is my financial planning day. Like this is the day where I'm reassessing the budget. And people think that when you set a budget, right, that's just the budget for the business. No, budget for businesses changes all the time depending on the need, depending on the needs of the business, the needs of your customers, the needs, when it comes to just like it could be website building, whatever the need is, you know that it changes. So that's why it's important to make sure you find out like a tool or a platform that you can use that's going to help you be set up successfully for that, because when you start missing dollars and you don't know where they're going, it's not good for anybody. It's not good for business, and it's definitely not good for you. So
And another thing, you're definitely right. And I think, this is something that I touch on a lot too, because over my years of consulting and working with different businesses, I ain't gonna
mhm.
lie. I'm gonna put some of y'all on blast. A lot of y'all don't even know what y'all need to run y'all business. This is one of the most touchiest topics that I probably
Mhm.
have. The
Yep.
hardest question to get for me to get a business owners to answer is what's your budget? you should
Right.
know you should know or at least have an idea of what you're willing to
Mhm.
spend and what you have in the bank account to spend. And the biggest answer I
Yep.
get oh, I don't know. It's like you should know this before, if you, especially if you're inquiring about a service or inquiring about a resource, you should know, at
Yeah.
least have a basic idea, like, okay, this is how much I can realistically spend on whatever it is, whether it's building a website or like you said, marketing or whatever the case may be. You should
Hmm.
already know. And you know, I ain't bashing. Yeah, I am. I'm bashing y'all. We bashing because y'all got to do better at the end of the day. And knowing what y'all, but what you need, at least have an idea, a ballpark. You know, and I'm not saying don't start a business until you have all the money that you need. You know, that's not realistic because I think we all, we've all been there. You get what I'm saying? But at least have a goal, have an idea so you can set your goals and say, look, I'm gonna need X, Y, and Z amount of dollars to really make this thing work, to really kick this
Right.
thing off, to really get, the best website that I can get, to really get some marketing that can, like you said, that can actually benefit me instead of just doing it for the sake of it or doing it because, it's cheap. You get what I'm
Right.
saying? Because
Hmm.
you know,
Because cheap is not always the good way.
it's not always. And look,
Hmm.
me as a business owner, myself, hey, we love a little shortcut here and there. We love a little discount here and there. If if we can, cut that budget a little short, let's do it. But it's always important to really include and make sure that and have a good idea of what you looking to spend. What do you have to
Right.
spend? What can you realistically afford right now towards whatever it is that you're building towards your business? And this should be in your business plan. So this, when I ask that question and then they can't answer, it just let me know that you don't have a plan because you should have this in your business plan. This should be in your business plan, and it might not be down to the cent, because like you said, your budget is going to change. The economy changes. It all it, it can be something that's changing the president that can change your whole budget, or adding on a service, or adding on something extra to your business. It can change your budget, but at least have something to start with, people, because
Right.
we got to do better, man. We don't be having no budgets. We don't be having no plans of action. But then we want people to believe in our business. We want people
Right.
to we want people to buy into our business and buy our products. But we don't even do the due diligence to put together a base. And this is basic. This is basic. So and this
Hmm.
is what really pushed us into this lane to really build the mob. This will really, this is where all the resources that we have. This is just real life examples of what I've seen. People, I ran across a lot of business owners who didn't have business plans. So I'm like, okay, maybe we need to help them put together business plans. I come across a lot of business owners
Right.
don't have, a good quality content. So I'm like, okay, maybe we need to make sure that, we provide that resource. So everything that we have and that we provide, I've seen these are the common denominators that most businesses and most business owners don't have. And it is what it is.
Mm.
And you know what? I ain't even, trying to bash too hard because I was in that same boat. When I started,
Yeah, me too.
when I started Exclusive Models magazine, we didn't have no business plan. We knew what we wanted to do. And I had to learn as I went. But let me tell you, I bumped my head so many times. I wasted so much money. And went in and
I
man,
know.
bumped my head so many times. So sometimes it's good to bump your head, but if you don't have to, why do it? And that's why
Right.
it's a blessing. That's why we pair up certain people with mentors and advisors and different people that can kind of
Hmm.
on that because we all need it. I think my business and my mindset, I wouldn't say just the business, but my mindset really elevated when, I got my mentors. Shout out to Alonzo Palmer, rest in peace. Um, and shout out to Naima. She's she let her tell that she wouldn't probably admit to being a mentor because she's still in it, but she was
Right.
a mentor to me. She was one of those people that taught me how to go on the road and what to do when you're going on these tours and you hitting these major cities and you're doing these big productions. And it was
Hmm.
important for me to see those things and be able to see firsthand how these people was operating behind the scenes, for me to get my stuff together. But hey, and that's what we're here for. We're here to help people not make the same mistakes we made. I made a lot.
Absolutely.
I made a lot of, but we students of the game. I'm always a student to the game. I'm not gonna say I'm done making mistakes. We here to learn from our mistakes and learn from our actions. So at the end of the day, that's what it's about. Real quick, man, what is the most memorable customer interaction you've had, and how did that really impact your approach on sales?
Yes. So, whew, when I this goes back to the research that we were doing, right? Um, and when people started to reach out to me asking me, do I have a product out there for women, right? And again, our product is for everyone. But when people specifically started asking me, do I have a product for women? They, hurt my nail beds and things like that. From that one particular lady, I had another lady reach out to me, and she was just so thankful that she ran into Serenity nail polish. She was telling us that she was going through chemotherapy, um, and it changed her because she wanted to. From there, she was like, she beat chemo, so shout out to her. But from there, she just wanted to change her lifestyle, and so that's why when I talk about, vegan and things like that, people just think about the diet, but this lady walked me through the whole course of like, yo, I changed my life, and like your product is one of the things that like helped me feel better, helped me feel good when I was in the hospital. It helped me through my journey. And not only that, it's something that she consistently uses now because everything that she uses, from whether it's stuff she put in her body or to the outside, everything is clean, right? And so that you don't expect those type of emails, you don't expect those type of letters necessarily from people. You have a mission or a vision, what you would like your product or your service to be, how you would like or envision things to go. But sometimes, like, when you have a plan, God has another one, and and more times than not, he has a better one, right?
It's a
And
better
so
one.
he has a better one. And so unexpected things like that can happen all the time. And so for me, that was the most touching story. If you guys go on our social media page, Rainy Nail Polish, that was one of the motivations behind the shoot that we did back in October for Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we donated a portion of proceeds. We do that every October. We, encourage people to buy, and we take a portion of the proceeds and we donate it and we give it back to the National Breast Cancer Foundation. And so that's the story behind that as well, because it's not only saying, listen, our products are clean, but they're touching real people's lives. And so we want to continue to give back to that community as well, in hopes of touching someone else's life and making them feel great about who they are.
That's the main goal. See, that's dope. I think and this is why I asked this question because I think a lot of us, like I said, we all want to make money. We want to be the best, but we get
Hmm.
away, and sometimes that can pull us away from what we really on this earth to do. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
put us on this earth to really serve each other, and especially the weak and the needy. We gotta serve each other, and matter of fact, and I didn't ask this week, but usually I ask this. If you live with us, if you got a business, what benefit, how do the community benefit from your business, your product or
Hmm.
service? Because at the end of the day, that's a super important question. If you're not thinking about that, you're probably not going to be that successful or have longevity.
Right. Hmm.
So I think that's super important for us to really keep on our head. For us, it's creating more jobs, creating legacies.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So I think that's the biggest, that's like the biggest honor that I can have, being able to be a part of somebody's legacy and be able to, be of assistance and not just because most of us, most people just want to, kind of stick around but keep a distance until you make it. Then they want to be up
Yep.
close. But it's like I
Hmm.
love being a part of the process and then seeing the things sprout. And I think that's the biggest, the biggest payment, for us for the most part. So if you're not thinking like that, if you have a business or a service or a product, you always want to figure out how can the community actually benefit from this product. How
Right.
can the community benefit from your business and not just, well, how can I get the most money out of it? You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that's super important, and I think that's what really build character and help entrepreneurs stay in this thing longevity, for the most part. So much
Absolutely.
for real, for sure. Real quick,
Absolutely. Go ahead.
No, what you
No,
about to
I was
say?
saying that's one of the things that eventually we would love to do. We would love to have a spot that we can open in the community that provides that self care service, that mindful meditation, that affirmation. Would love to have some type of counselor on deck. Um, and I just envision a place of like, this is where I go for like self care, and then within the same breath, employing and creating jobs within the community. But it's further down the line, but definitely one of the things that is still on my heart that's brewing for Serenity
Hey,
Massage.
it's
Steps.
closer than you think. It's closer than you think for sure. Especially with your webinar. And if, for those that don't know, shout out to you, for the entrepreneur one-on-one webinar, especially for our mompreneurs, because it's super important, to have platforms like that to help, get people over that hump. And trust me, it's gonna pay off. You stay consistent with that, and it's gonna be that person that's gonna come back and be like, "Man, your webinars really helped me, grow my business and put me on the right path, and now I'm here." You know what I mean? And
Right.
sometimes it might be, most of the time it be people that you never would have thought that hit you up, or people that you don't know at all. So
Absolutely.
all it takes is that one. I think we get so caught up in, getting a million followers and a million views that we kind
Hmm.
of neglect that one. But that's what we
Right.
come back to.
That's
We come
true.
to those select people that really need us. That's what it's all about. That's all it takes. That one person change, that one person
Mhm.
life. And you never know. That might come back to you and be like, "Hey, I got a gift for you. I got a blessing." It's always good for that. What advice would you give entrepreneurs seeking funding for the first time based on your experience?
Yeah, so I would say there's a few different ways that I would say do funding and seeking funding. I know last week, this was Monday. It felt like many moons ago. We spoke about different things. We spoke about angel investors, people that you know people that believes in your vision and they want to basically invest in you, invest in your business as to help start up. Um, of course, they can want different things. It could be like a potential share in your company when it starts to make money. We spoke about venture capital and getting on websites like Kickstarter and people having a group of people that rally behind you and rally behind your mission, tapping into that so that you can get funding through that. There's silent partners when it comes to getting business funding. We also spoke about grants, the difference between grants and loans, and how sometimes grants could be a little bit tricky to get because of the language, and the chances and things like that. But there are a lot of loans out there. If you do research, like we have the discretion of the internet at our fingertips, literally. Like you can look for grants and things that your company needs based on um, your business so that it's more tailored to you, right? And also for funding opportunities, reach out to the Mob family. They'll
Yes,
get you right.
ma'am.
They will
Courtesy of
get
the mob.
they will get you right. Because oftentimes when you first start out and you don't have the capital, you you use your money, right? And people will tell you don't try not to use your money. Try not to use
OPM.
your money. Yeah, try to get your other people's money, try to get your business credit going, and go about it a different route. But listen, y'all want to know the details, the steps? Come through on Monday. Join us on the workshop as well. We happy to share that information. And join the mob community because there's so many people, like knowledgeable people in the group.
We got another icebreaker question for you guys. If you had to cut your monthly spending by 20% starting today, what would be the first thing you would eliminate? And what would you absolutely keep no matter what? What you got for us, Jazz?
Oh, if I had to cut my monthly spend by, oh dear, I guess I could eat out less.
I'm telling you,
I
hey,
guess summertime is coming and I can lay off the fast food. I guess.
gotta get the meal preps in, gotta prep the
I know.
meals. It's hard. But you know,
Let you forget a meal, man. Let you forget a meal, and that's it. Like Uber got your money. Like
definitely, definitely. That's a good
in
one.
New
That's a
York
good one.
City with the traffic on the way to work, man, if I'm 20 minutes out, forget it. I'm not going back. I don't
I
know about
don't
everybody
I don't even
else.
see how anybody live in New York. Like, how do y'all even survive? Like, what's going on? I don't see how
I'd be
people
like, I'm
live
not.
in New York or LA. Like, goodness gracious, how do y'all survive? So real quick,
Barely.
I don't want to keep you all day. I got one last question for you, and
Okay.
this is super important because we've been talking about this a lot lately. If you in the chat, if you on live, man, make sure you guys drop the answer to the icebreaker question. But Jazz, what how has your mindset evolved as a leader, and what practices do you incorporate to maintain a positive spirit?
So I give myself, I let myself know it's okay to not be perfect, for things to not always be perfect, for things to not go always as planned, right? They say write a vision down, make it plain, and that's just the start of the work. And in the process, there's days where there's hiccups, there's days where you're tired or you don't feel like doing it every single day, but giving myself grace in the process to continue to show up, like even when I don't feel like showing up, I know it's for a greater purpose that's beyond me. So for me personally, that's one of the things I do. I make sure that in the morning I listen to a podcast just to get my mind right. I get up early in the morning just to meditate, to clear my mind, so that I could start my day calm, right? I make a plan when it's silent, when I have nobody talking to me, because once everybody's up, forget about it. And
Definitely,
where I could just sit and hear my thoughts. And, I make sure I make a plan at different times, whether it's a plan for the month, a plan for the week, and a plan for the day. So there's three different types of plans that I make, right? And then I make the fallback plan. You do as much as you can in the plan that you want, and also what is something that can be slightly pushed, right? You're not going to always push everything for tomorrow because then it'll never get done, but that comes with giving yourself the grace through the process. So for me, that's how I stay in positive spirits, because in the beginning, if I didn't have everything on my to-do list checked off and it wasn't done, I would get down really hard on myself, like, dang. And somebody told me, I forgot who it was, but they were like, even if you spend 30 minutes out your day doing something for your business, you can say, yo, I worked on business today. And that's an accomplishment within itself. So as long as you are actively going, and even the whole thing of like, there's times where you as an entrepreneur, there's times where you feel like you want to quit, right? But they always say, like, it's okay to slow down, it's not okay to give up, because if not you, then who? And if not now, then when, right? So giving yourself grace in the process always lifts my spirit up. Podcasts, speaking to people like you mentioned before, mentors, just having people push you, like, hey, did you check this out? Mob is definitely good for doing that. Did you see what I sent you? I'd be like, looking at it now, right? But we need that push. Sometimes you need that push to keep you going in the process. So,
we all
and
do.
of course, pray through the process and trust it.
Gotta trust that process. Gotta have accountability partners. This is what I love to talk about all the time. You can't have yes mans all the time. You gotta have somebody that's
Yep.
every now and then hey, look like, hey, we could be doing better. We could be doing better. We could be
Right.
doing more. But mindset is everything. It's always good to take some time for yourself and get your mind right. We've been talking about meditation. That's been coming up a lot,
Yep.
different things like that. But do what works for you. It ain't got to be meditation. I was one of those
Right.
people that really didn't believe in meditation for the longest until I started doing it. But I could be
Hmm.
doing it more. Sometimes it's different. Sometimes I do what you do. I might
Yep.
turn on a podcast or turn on something that's gonna get my mind spinning. I like to listen to certain people like Gary Vee and Grant Cardone and people that's out here moving and shaking
Hmm.
things that can actually give some value, and not just
Right.
BS all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes look at get some BS in there a little bit. Hit the social media feed and sit on TikTok for a minute. But it's always good to mix it up and balance it out at the end of the day. Real quick, man, let these folks know where they can find you and what you got coming up next.
Yeah, so you can find us if you go on Instagram right now, which a lot of you are, type in Serenity Nail Polish. Serenity Nail Polish on Instagram. Check out our website, www.serenitynailpolish.com. The link is also in our bio. Each and every Monday at 5 o'clock, we go live. Our Mamapreneur one-on-one webinar workshop. Make sure you tap in. Registration can also be found on our website for there as well, where you will get special emails and offers. And we also have new products coming out soon, coming right to your doorstep. So make sure you stay tuned in and sign up for those newsletters.